Hello and welcome to your first ever flipped lesson here in seminar, possibly your first ever flipped lesson in your entire educational career. Flipped lessons are where I record a video of me giving some sort of instruction or lecture for you to view on your Chromebook or computer at your own discretion, time, place, etc., instead of it happening in class, which allows you to then access the material whenever it is that you need to do it. With this particular lesson, I know that many of you are going to make it to it at different times. And so instead of giving the same lecture over and over and over again, I'm recording it once for all of the students that make it to it at different times, and also it makes it so that you can view it as many times as you want. If you don't get a step, feel free to pause, go back, watch it again, whatever it is that you need to do in order to really get how to do this. So this particular lesson is about how to create a scatter plot graph using the data that were given in this particular assignment. So you should be able to see my cursor moving on the screen right here. And we're going to first make this graph of maternal mortality, which is the deaths per 100,000 births over years in the US and in comparable countries around the world. So the first thing you have to do is to open your drive. So I'm going to switch over to the internet, got my drive up here, and I'm going to click this new button, and I'm going to create a spreadsheet right there. Now the first thing I'm going to do with this spreadsheet is to give it a name. So I'm just going to model what you should be doing, which is to name it with your name and with what the assignment is. So I'm going to say scatterplot, because that's what we're making, and then I'm going to use my name, Mr. Ben. There we go. Now the next thing you should do is to come over here and click the share button and share it with me. You can also just submit it through Canvas in order to give it to me there. So when I'm making a graph, I need to get the data and put it on the spreadsheet, obviously. So the first thing that I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to name what the data is going to be. So I'm going to have the year here. This row is going to represent the United States and our maternal mortality rate that we have here. And this one is going to be referencing the average of comparably rich countries. Now I'm going to go back to my document, and I'm going to use some shortcuts here. So I'm going to highlight all of these years. I'm just going to copy them with Control-C or Command-C, depending on what you're using. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to plug that in, click there, and hit paste. There are my years right there. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing to get my data. So here, the US, how appropriate we have the wheel of death as we're talking about mortality there. Okay, so we got our mortality of 22 people per 100,000 births died in 2003, etc., etc. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to switch over and I'm going to paste that in here. And then you're no dummy, you can guess what happens next. So I probably don't even need to describe what I'm doing, but I'm going to anyway. Copy it, switch back over here, paste it in. Cool, I have my data. And you can already see that the maternal mortality is much higher in the United States than it is in other countries that pay even less for their health care than we do. So now I want to make a graph of that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here, and you want to make sure to select this column as well, because that will automatically generate some labels in your graph that we're going to make. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to highlight by holding down on the button as I drag the cursor over and make sure I get all of that data highlighted. Then I click the button that looks like a graph. It's probably hiding. Mine's hiding right there. And then it's this thing that looks like a graph. And I've highlighted that data over there. Click the button. I said click the button. There we go. So now it's going to bring us here. Now, I don't want just a line chart. I want to make a scatterplot graph, which looks like this right here. And I have my two different scatterplots. In the blue, I have the data representing the US. Here, the red, I have representing the average. But this graph, although already looking pretty good, is not everything we want to do. So we're going to go over here to Customize. And we need some chart axes and titles, right? So right now, the chart title is just US and average, but that's not what this data shows. The data shows maternal mortality in the US versus other countries. That's what it actually shows. And then also, I don't have any title on my y-axis. Look at that thing all bare over there. Numbers without labels don't have meaning. This is going to be something that you will definitely need in your final project and all the other graphs, is that you're going to have labels on all of these axes. And what are those numbers right there? They are deaths per 100,000 births. That's what those numbers mean. So now I have my labels all done. So I'm all done with my labeling. I've got a title. I've got a key here that keys the data. I have label here, label there with the years. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some fancy mathematics with this stuff. So I'm going to go into my series. I'm going to leave it at apply to all because I want to do that. And I'm going to put in what's called a trend line. So trend lines show patterns in the data. Basically, the computer goes through and it makes a line that is as close as possible to all of the different points. So I want to just click this box right here, and it's doing some complex calculus for you right there, but all you have to do for this fancy statistical regression is click a button. Now I'm going to come down here. For the label, I want to use the equation. The reason I want the equation is because this slope of my line equation tells me exactly how it's changing over time. And you can see that in the United States, it's growing. Every year, 0.76 more deaths happen than did the year before. That's what this slope means, is that it's increasing by a rate of 0.76 deaths per year. While elsewhere in the world, it's actually going down by about 0.15 deaths per 100,000 births every single year. So yeah, kind of sucks, doesn't it? And is this actually valid? Is this a good representation? Does my line fit? If I click this button right here, show R squared, the R squared value just tells you how well your line fits. And it's given in, out of, like you can think of it as in percents. So like this number right here of R squared of 0.898 means it's a 90% fit, roughly, I'm rounding. It's a 90% fit with the data. So that line fits really well. So we can look at this and we can use that to represent this data with 90% accuracy. The other line doesn't fit as well. It has like a 78.5% fit for its R squared value. So it doesn't fit as well as the blue line does, but it still is a pretty good fit. If it is 78.5% accurate, that's still pretty acceptable. And that is how to create a scatter plot using the computer. Now, for the next assignment, you're going to do this on your own. So chances are you're going to have to watch this again, pause it a few times as you are creating the graph, do it step by step. And I'll give you the first step. It's to come back to the same spreadsheet and add another sheet. So sheet 1 is going to be where you have your graph about maternal mortality. Here on sheet 2, do all the same things, except put in the data that shows, the con of having universal health care, which is that the healthcare system becomes overburdened and you have to wait a long time to get service sometimes. So hopefully you get how to graph using computers and how to follow a flipped lesson. This is Mr. Ben signing off. Good luck.